Welcome to 28 Days and Beyond.
The show where we talk about our history, our heritage, and our culture.
I'm Amari.
I'm Charisma. Welcome.
Yeah. Charisma, hello.
AJ, how are you?
I'm doing
all right. You like that?
Yeah.
I'm trying something new.
Sure. Yo, listen, wellness.
Yes.
We see a lot of people talking about it nowadays, which I think is an overall positive thing. It's a conversation that's much more prevalent, huh?
It's needed.
Well, so go ahead. What do you, when wellness is said, what comes to your mind?
Just taking care of all aspects of you as a person, right? So I've had this conversation with my parents, I've had it with my peers, I've had it with friends, and for such a long time I feel like people have just felt like they had to work, and almost took work.
There it is. All right, cool. Got you. Yeah.
And almost felt like they needed to celebrate the fact that they had vacation days left over, or they just weren't taking time for themselves. Like people were almost like waiting for an applause from other people to tell them like, yay, good job, you're working really hard and you're doing all the things. But in order for you to be the best version of yourself, I think you have to do the things that are necessary to take care of yourself. That means mental health, that means going to the gym, getting exercise, getting fresh air, journaling, meditating, whatever those things are.
So you're saying you said all aspects.
Yeah.
All aspects.
Self-care is important.
All right.
So what do you do for self-care?
I don't.
You don't?
That's not true. I think, honestly, I not in a sort of conscious way, the way that people are like very intentional about, I do this, right? But I think, being more present of these different aspects that you're talking about, right? Being more mindful of my emotional response to things and what is that rooted in. On the other hand, I gotta say, I don't remember the last time I've been to a doctor that wasn't a dentist. So there's still areas, right, where I know it's important, but I haven't really began to take on that lifestyle.
Well, I'm guilty of that too, in some respects. I think it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight. But I'm excited today because we're going to be talking about the idea of wellness with our guest today. Our guest today is Avery Marz, and she actually is a stroke survivor and a wellness advocate. So I'm very excited to hear her story.
Yeah.
We heard a little bit before we started, but I'm excited for everybody else to hear her story.
Definitely.
So we're going to take a break, but then we'll be back with more 28 Days and Beyond right after this.
Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond. We're joined now by Avery Marz. Avery, thank you for joining us.
Yes,
of course, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, let's begin. What sort of set you on this journey of wellness?
So my freshman year of college, I suffered a stroke on my move-in day. I completely collapsed off my bed in my dorm room, and being paralyzed, I was obviously very confused, and I looked up to my mom, who was in the room with me at the time, and I said, "Mom, what's going on?" Just speaking out of the right side of my mouth. The left side was the affected side. And she said, "Avery, you're having a stroke." And I would say since then, it's been a 6-year journey, of wellness and health for me, and it was definitely a gradual pace to get where I am, but that's kind of what motivated me in 2014.
Wow.
So many questions.
Yeah, no. Can we talk a little bit about just the process of healing for you? Because, a lot of people have strokes, but the healing process is different.
But not a lot of people have strokes at that age, though.
And not a lot of
Be a
people have.
teenager.
You were how old?
17 years old.
17 years old.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your healing process?
Yeah.
You said you were paralyzed on your left
side, head to toe, yeah.
Wow.
So I think there was different levels of healing, and I think I'm still healing in my own ways.
Yeah.
The first healing was definitely the physical, to be able, I was a Division I athlete at St. Joe's. I played basketball at the time. So healing, my physical body was everything to me because I was a Division I athlete, and that's how I identified. So the first thing was, all right, let's figure out, how I'm going to get movement back into my fingers, into my toes, into these things. One, to just live a normal life, because at the time, I couldn't go to the bathroom on my own. I couldn't do the simple everyday things that a 17-year-old should be able to do.
Yeah.
So first it was the physical healing, and that actually was a 3-year period, I would say, until they deemed me fully recovered. But then after that, I would say it was a mental healing. I had to take a full year off from basketball. After being able to physically come back, I had to go through a mental healing process of seeing a therapist and being able to vocalize my emotions. And I think that was probably the hardest part of my healing in general, was the mental, because I was very stubborn and you know, I wanted to be really outwardly positive because I knew a lot of people had it worse. And at the end of the day, I survived. So there was that part of the healing. I know this is a lot. And then I think the last one is the spiritual healing side. And that's kind of more so coming within the last year. Like I said, I had a stroke in 2014, but now I'm kind of having this spiritual revelation, I guess you could say, at 23 years old. So, yeah.
Where do we go from here? Because that I'm in so many directions. But one of the things that we were talking about before the break was just this idea of wellness. So Charisma was saying that's in in many facets.
Right.
And it sounds like you also see it that way. So what is wellness altogether? You've mentioned the physical, the mental, the emotional, but now you're talking about the spiritual as well.
Yeah, I think it's different for everyone, which we also talked about. I think it's really important that you just focus on one. I think when you kind of go at it with all these things, like I want to get my mental health right, and I also want to go to the gym, and I also want to build a relationship with God or whomever it may be. You know, I think that's a lot to take on for one person. So I think it is breaking it up and taking the steps to first focus on one, and then I think you'll see it kind of unravel into the next. And yeah, that's different for everyone, but I would say, of course, what you eat is really important. Just any type of physical activity, whether it's yoga or going for a run. I would say, yes, spiritually, it's really important. And I think that comes down to also what you're reading, what you're listening to, what you're watching. That's another part of wellness that I think sometimes gets lost in translation. You know, what TV show are you watching? You know, binging is fine if it's something that is important and can, you know, help you to be a better human in society. But if you're binge watching something that's not really elevating you, you know, what are you putting your time into? So.
That's really interesting that you say that. I had a health crisis in 2013, and on my road to recovery, that was one of the things that I made sure that I did, which was I only watched positive things. I only watched things that made me smile, made me happy. I didn't watch anything that had violence in it, because I knew that somehow deep down I knew that, you know, me feeding myself mentally positive things would help me on my road to recovery, and it definitely worked. But I definitely want to hear more about your journey, more about this idea of wellness. And we talked a little bit about self-care as well. So I definitely want to get more into that
routines,
as well. Yeah, just some things that you did and things that helped you along your process. But we have to take a little bit of a break. So we're going to take a break, and we'll be back with more 28 Days and Beyond right after this.
And we're back on 28 Days and Beyond with Avery Marz. So Avery, all right, so you found your way onto this path of wellness. You said 6 years in now. What are some of the, let's say, conclusions or some of the larger lessons that you've pulled out in terms of wellness and its importance to other people?
I think the first one is, like I kind of said before, it's all about what you're consuming. And that is, you know, what you eat, that is what you watch, what you read, who you surround yourself with is really important. And I don't know the cause of my stroke. So for me, stress is a really big one. So when I say, you know, who you surround yourself with, sometimes when you're always in negative environments or you're always with people who, you know, don't even think the same way you do. It might not be negative, they're just not on the same wavelength in a sense. That can create stress in your life. And I think it's really important to just like focus on those things. So that's a big one for me, I think, within the last year. It's just stress in general. So.
I would love to hear more about some of your routines, because one of the things we talked about briefly was this idea of self-care and how that looks different for everybody. And I'm just curious, what do you do to make sure that you're maintaining your peace and make sure that you're staying as stress-free as possible? And even good stress can still be stress. But, you know, what are some of the things you do? Right,
and like you said, you know, sometimes if you're not stressing, that means you don't care about it. So I do think it is important to have stress. But it's definitely different levels, and it's you don't want to be stressed all the time. You can't be stressed in every hour of the day. You know, you have to figure out what you can de-stress with, you know, as well. And for me, my morning routine is really important. I'm a really early riser. That was not always the case.
She's one of those.
Oh wait, hold on, break this down. So
5 a.m. I wake up, and I'm not always to bed early, to be honest. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you I sleep for 10 hours because I don't, and I don't even function well on 10 hours of sleep. I find that when I sleep longer sometimes, like that long, I wake up really in a fog. So everyone's different, especially when it comes to sleep. But my morning routine is really important. So I wake up every morning, I say something I'm grateful for before I even get out of bed. And it could be something as silly as like, you know, I'm grateful for the socks I have on right now, or something like that, you know.
Socks are important in the winter time, especially
right,
wake up.
cold.
You know,
it's not important if they match, though. I digress.
That doesn't matter. Yeah, that doesn't
we'll
matter.
argue about that one later. And I say something I'm grateful for, you know, then I get out of bed. I don't look at my phone. Obviously, my alarm is on my phone, so I have to hit stop, or else it'll just keep ringing and ringing, and that's not a good morning routine.
Right, exactly.
And then, you know, my phone's away. I would say my phone's away probably for a half an hour. I take 20 minutes to meditate, brush my teeth, do the normal hygienic things. I read whatever book I'm reading at the time, whether it's just a page, it depends what kind of morning it is. And then I make sure I plan, you know, what I'm going to eat for breakfast that morning. Because I think it's really important to be intentional with what you eat, you know, and to put care into it. Because when you put care into what you're eating, that's what's most important.
Right.
You know, sometimes it's not that, oh, this has no sugar, because, you know, sometimes it doesn't make you feel good. But being intentional with what I'm going to eat today, I think, is a big part of my morning routine. So,
you know, one of the things you said in there, you said depending on what type of morning it is, and it reminded me of something else that you said, when people try and just throw all of these new sort of additions into their life, and that says to me that there is still some flexibility in this. So it's not necessarily a rigid, you know, because it becomes almost unnatural for people to begin to adopt these things. But you're saying that, you know, little by little, you said it took you, 4 years in order to really, you know, get to a point where you felt like you were confident in that. So tell us a little bit more about that flexibility.
Yeah, I think where I'm at now could maybe be overwhelming for some people. Like I just said 5 a.m. and, you know, people cringe that that's really early. But like I said, it is a process. And even being a Virgo, like I'm very hard.
What? I'm not
Visa.
Oh, you're a Virgo. So I'm like, wait, I'm a Sag. I'm confused.
I'm very like hardworking and methodical about everything I do, but it was even hard for me to get into these really rigid routines.
Yeah.
So I did take an approach of, you know what, if I can do one thing today that sets me on the right path, then I'm going to feel better. It's not going to be a perfect day, but I'll know that, hey, I did this morning, so like if something happens, at least one thing went right. And I think that's why I try and tell my friends and anyone I talk to is if you can do one thing that you can just set aside and say, you know what, today might have been the worst day. I might have been in traffic for 5 hours. You know, my boss was really rude today. I didn't eat great and I'm feeling guilty about it. But you know what, this morning I woke up and I meditated for 20 minutes. And it's something that you can sit on and just say, you know, right. And we need small victories because life is not a victorious train. You know what I mean? It has its bumps. More often than not.
Right.
Well,
so
you were definitely a testament to victory.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're out of time, but thank you so much for coming and sharing your story. I know that it's going to help people. It helped us. So
I appreciate that. Thank you for having me.
That's it.
We'll be back with more 28 Days and Beyond right after this.
Welcome back to 28 Days and Beyond. Charisma.
Yes.
Avery's story.
So powerful.
It was. I think even more than the story is like the sort of lessons that she's learned from that. There was a lot to take away. One of the things that I really appreciated was a lot of times when we talk about wellness, you get like these real, you know,
flighty, woo-woo.
Right, head in the air, like, you know, oh, well, you know, it's like, but for her, I felt like she was talking about some very grounded things in a very practical way.
Yes.
And I really, really valued that, you know, just one thing at a time sort of thing.
Even when she spoke about, you know, not putting pressure on yourself for your routine. Like, I think people have this idea that, you know, wellness is supposed to like look the same for everyone, and it's not. You're supposed to tailor make it for what you need in order to feel your best self. And so for me, waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning is just not a thing.
I mean,
like,
you know,
I literally went to bed at 5. Tonight and was
rock
back
and
up
roll
at 8.
lifestyle ain't gonna make
but,
it though.
You know, sleep is something I'm trying to do better with. But
now you say that.
Yeah.
I've been listening to some podcasts that are talking about the scientifically how significant sleep is more important to us than we've actually realized. You know what I mean? And how it's a necessary thing. One of the things I was talking about with Avery offline was like LeBron James at the beginning of his season plans out his sleep schedule.
Wow.
We're adjusting for a time zone change, or you know what I'm saying? Like that's how important it is to be able, for an athlete, but also for all of us to be able to operate at our optimal level. But another thing is that idea of not being hard on yourself or not stressing. The fact is, like, I think wellness is about balance.
Yeah.
It's about balance. That's not to say you're not going to have days where you're sleepy or you're angry or you're whatever, but it's to say that ultimately in the grand scheme of things that you have achieved some level of balance in your life where you can experience all of those things equally.
And it's about being intentional about those things, right? I think a lot of us fall into patterns and we fall into routine, not necessarily intentionally, but it's just like, this is how my day usually goes. So meaning my Monday usually goes this way. My Tuesday,
Yep.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
I do know what you mean.
And so much of it is rushing and doing all these things and trying to fit all the things in before it's time to wake up to do it all over again tomorrow. So it's just, you know, setting aside that time to do things for you. And also one of the things that she said that I have started to practice for myself is, you know, practicing gratitude, starting every day for me with being thankful and really just, you know, vocalizing some of the things that I'm thankful for. It's changed everything.
Yo, I mean, it's a beautiful way.
I still get angry at bad drivers, but
I mean,
you know,
well,
I'm human.
Yeah, exactly. But I am thankful for you. I'm thankful for
thankful
28
for
days.
you
I'm
too.
thankful for, you know, being alive.
Me too.
Yeah. This has been another episode of 28 Days and Beyond.
Where we talk about our history, our heritage, and our culture. We'll see you next time.
Peace.